Big D. I got CG Kid coming on the channel. He's giving me some ideas, guys and gals. I hope you guys stick around, like, subscribe. That helps me out. It gets this channel to grow so that the message can get out there and help more people. If you're going through something, you're struggling, you're dealing with addiction, and you have nobody to talk to, please, I'm here, man. My number's on the screen. Text me. You can call me. I can't promise I'll pick up. I'm Pacific time in the United States, live in Washington State. Feel free to reach out. I've got email, social media, you name it. There's ways of contacting me down in the description. We have a Discord with a community of recovery people where you guys can come down there and spill your beans, open up. But if you want to contact me directly, that's my number. And also, we're going to have a series we're going to be doing with CG Kid here on addiction and discussing some of the stuff we've learned, that we've picked up, our way of interpreting and looking at things, and how to help addicts, like, get this message out. So hopefully you guys like this. If you're not a subscriber of his channel, welcome to Earth. Okay, I appreciate you guys coming here, and go show him some love, man. He just dropped an excellent video trying to tear down the stigma of being a kind of a recovery Nazi, and like, you need to do it this way or you're not in the recovery. I love that, man, and I hope you guys appreciate what we do here on this show. So here we go. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Derek Lambert here. You guys know who this is. I knew you were going to say. Look, man, you dropped a bomber, dude. I literally loved every second of that video that you just put out, because so many people who watch my channel, for example, I try to relate to everything you and other people say. And so many people who watch my channel have looked at me and they're like, Derek did it cold turkey. Derek did it without using anything. And I don't want to give off the wrong message that you need to do it my way. I want people to relate, and if you're like me, this might work for you. You know what I'm saying? But I'm learning so much like you. There's so much I'm learning that I know I don't have all the answers. Does that make sense? I think that's where you were coming from.
I think recovery is very individualized. Addiction is very individualized, and we all have our own path, and nobody has the answer for everybody. You know what I mean? But we can talk and kind of be open-minded to the idea that we don't have all the answers. And through admitting that we don't know much about addiction, in reality, I feel like that's where we know the most, even though it's very little. And what I know is that kindness, love, humility, compassion, mercy, forgiveness, these are the qualities of recovery. And I don't see that in stripping somebody of their clean date. I understand almost the fear that's behind it, because you feel like you're graying out the areas that are what is clean. If you gray out those areas too much, and those words, you almost take value away from even saying you're clean. But I think that in reality, the people that we're stripping the clean date away from are people that we wouldn't know are using in the first place. When I was in active addiction, you knew. But when do we have the right to diagnose somebody with addiction? I don't think we ever do. I think it's a diagnosis they have to assume themselves. Otherwise, what weight does it carry? But if the behavior becomes so extreme that you see them and their teeth are kind of messed up, or they're always coming in and they're always glossy-eyed, you see it, and then you can show concern, and that's not clean to me. That's the only time where I feel like I have a time to be concerned. I see somebody shaking or sweating, I'm like, what's going on? Or they don't eat, and I'm like, what's going on? They're like, I need to smoke before I eat. Then I could kind of say something, but I come from a place of concern. So I don't think it's so much graying out the area what clean is. You know it when you see active addiction. I think that the way that we're doing things now currently, though, is actually harming more people, because people go into recovery that genuinely need anxiety medication or taper medication, or they genuinely have a healthy relationship with psychedelics or marijuana, and it's helping them in some way. And that clean date is really important to them, and they're very proud of it. And to strip it away from them, it might be the only thing they love themselves for. I just don't see it as a loving thing to do. And I think it stems from fear,
You got a good point there. And so, for me, let's focus in on that more, on what you just brought up. When I've had a lot of phone calls, a lot of people reach out, and I can't imagine how many you've had. And I say that to say a lot of people even are a little bit afraid to say, hey, Derek, I got on Kratom, is that okay? Asking me for permission. And I felt really uneasy, almost like they couldn't open up about it. And if that is the deep dark secret, which you said on your videos, like they're not going to come to you now. And if it is a problem, how can they come to you? But if it isn't a problem and it worked for them, why are they going to come to you? So now you're turning them away from either option. They can't come to you on a positive note. They can't come to you on a negative note. They have to stay to themselves. And isn't that the root of our problem? Is that I mean, look, we what is it? Dr. Tabor said in that video.
Gaber Mate.
Gaber, man,
he's a genius.
He said something that resonated with me. Maybe you want to elaborate. He talked about how mothers during the war, right there around 1944, which he was born, Jewish mothers during the concentration camps, all the babies were crying, and they were calling the doctor saying, "Hey, look, I have a baby that's crying," and he's like, "All the Jewish babies are crying." He didn't know anything about the war. He didn't know anything about Nazi Germany, any of that. He felt his mother's stress, and he felt the problems and emotions that his mother felt. And so as time went on, it seems that he said, and this is where I was getting from him, that he poured all his energy into labor at work because he wanted to feel like he was at least needed, even though he didn't feel loved, so to speak, because of all the turmoil in his life, or a lot of addicts' turmoil in their life. And if they can't even feel like they're needed, I mean, look, they already don't feel like they love themselves. Now they can't come to you openly about what they're taking, and they don't feel like they're even part of what you're saying, let alone feeling the love. So it's like, what do they have left, bro?
That's exactly what it is. I mean, people ask why nobody really chooses to become a drug addict, and some people drink alcohol and smoke pot, and it doesn't lead to harder things, or even the harder things they do, they don't get addicted. And I think that Dr. Gaber Mate, who you're bringing up, he's an absolute person to watch above all else. And you're looking for recovery content, it's a good place to start. And I think what he was saying was that when they do studies on the brain, they show that people that don't get the love when they're kids lack the ability to produce endorphins in the brain. It's actually physiological. They lack the ability to produce these feel-good molecules that make them feel able to love themselves. And when I first did drugs, it was really like that for me. It was just, I was able to love myself. It gave me what I was lacking as a child, you know, and that's why for me, I'm an intrinsic addict. I'm the type that needs to be abstinent because that's the kind of addict I am, and that's who he's talking about. I feel like those people typically are intrinsically addicted. Now, sometimes people have mental illness, you know what I mean? They're born with mental illness, and that can also cause them to not be able to feel self-love. You know, and sometimes people are traumatized too. Sometimes we don't really know like totally the cause of it, but I just don't think all addicts are the same, you know. And for me, I know I have to be completely abstinent. It's just weird, but it took a lot of experimentation to come to that conclusion. And I think the what really drew the line for me was when I became addicted to Benadryl, because they say on the box not have it for me. And for me, it's almost like challenge accepted. Like it just seemed like anything. You know, if I'm doing nicotine, am I clean? You know, and that's where we have to draw a line there, because people say anything that alters the way you think or feel, you're not clean. Well, where do we draw the line with things like nicotine and Benadryl? Where do we draw the lines with things like caffeine or psychoactive ingredients that are in food that are designed to be addictive, and they do change the way we think and feel? They supersize me. The guy at the end, he's thinking and feeling the totally different way. That's what he said. Mm-hmm. But we're addicted to that self-destruction, you know. Where do we draw the line? I think for each of us, it's in a different spot. But it's like, who am I to draw the line for someone else? Now, again, I go back. If they're obviously struggling, I'm going to show concern. I'm not going to say nothing. But I'm not going to come at them and strip them of their clean date. I think that it comes from a loving place. Like, you're hoping that you make them feel so bad about themselves that they reevaluate their life. But with addicts, when we feel bad about ourselves, we hate ourselves. It's hard for us to feel bad about ourselves and still love ourselves. And I think it almost sends people the other direction more often than not. It's like, that's the one reason they have to love themselves, and you took it away. This is the one place that they felt welcome, and now they feel ostracized. And there's all these implications of things that can go wrong, and now they feel like they can't talk about it. You know, the problem I have with I love the 12-step fellowship and the program, and I think anybody should give it a shot, because it could be the only thing in the world that works for you. But they always say, like, we never had someone go out and drink normally and come back and tell us about it. I'm like, yeah, they wouldn't come back and tell you about it. We don't have anybody that uses pot successfully. You know what I mean? That's kind of like one of their arguments. And it's like, but those people aren't allowed to speak up on it. Because you have a room of like 30 people and someone starts sharing, hey guys, pot helps me. I just want you to know, if you're that type of person, you're not alone. And they would get shut out immediately. And they aren't even going to say anything. Because in a group of like 20, 30 people, you don't want to stand against the grain. And I learned when I was in earlier sobriety, there's a lot of people that are in recovery that do use pot, that do use medication. Even my sponsor used medication. You don't know this at first. And I remember telling my sponsor that I was genuinely, it came from a place of love, but I was upset with it. I was genuinely concerned. I was like, man, I'm telling you what, people are smoking pot daily. And I was worried about them, but also I was kind of mad at them. They were able to do what I couldn't do. And my sponsor like stopped me, stared me dead in the eyes and said, Philip, that works for them. It doesn't work for you. And I was like, yeah, he's right. And since then, I've matured. And the more I talk to actively using addicts in recovery, because I'm very open-minded. The more open-minded I am, the more people share with me, and they share about their experiences with psychedelics or pot or things in recovery. And I'm like, man, even me, myself, I used psychedelics in my first year of sobriety. Whether or not they help me stay clean, I don't think the science is there for me to make a definitive statement, but I did do it with medicinal intent. I did intend for them to keep me clean. And I felt like they were helping. But I remember feeling like, can I talk about this? You know, even now it's like on YouTube, can I talk about this? There's like that it's almost like, you know, and I can on YouTube now. I mean, obviously, like when I started my channel, I was only 2 years, a year and a half away from psychedelics. And I didn't really want my family knowing because I was afraid of getting stigmatized. I didn't want the people at 12-step meetings because they watch my channel too. So I just kept with my date that I entered recovery. I didn't include psychedelics on the list. But now I look back and what I had to come to terms with is they are illegal, you know, that it is dangerous. And it got to a point where I didn't need it anymore because honestly, working the program, getting therapy, psychedelics, and I realized it wasn't a need, so why break the law? That's what it came down to for me. But I remember being in that box of like, I can't talk about this to anybody.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because there's a stigma there. I totally get it. And I can relate. Like, when you talked about abstinence, first of all, abstinence from what? Because, like, I totally get it. When do we draw the line? Oh, narcotics. That's where we draw the line. Narcotics. What do you mean by narcotic? Like a mind-altering drug, right? Well, they classify them different classes. And what starts to get me is that Benadryl, for example. Like, I would take it to go to sleep, but I still do. Like, I still to this day take Benadryl some nights to go to sleep. I don't take it every night, but I'll take it probably most nights, and it helps me go to sleep. Well, Derek, why don't you try taking the natural herb sleep medicines that they have out there? Like,
help you sleep. I have to say this. It might genuinely help you sleep. Like when I say addicted to Benadryl, the way I identify my addiction to it is I was taking 10 a night, every night.
Oh, wow.
15 to 20 even sometimes. So
yeah,
taking Benadryls, like, to me, that's like where I kind of draw the line. Usually when the use is so extreme, that how much you're doing and you're hiding, you can't hide it, first of all. That's where people are going to notice something's wrong with you if you're in addiction, you know? And that's where then it's okay to kind of interject and not necessarily strip them of their clean date, but just show concern and open up the dialogue and let them know that they're welcome and they can say whatever they want about themselves, but just let them know, hey, we're here for you.
I'm like, I guess, well, I take like 1.5, maybe 2, and
why do you
to go to sleep? To go to sleep.
Your mind?
So
to help you with something.
Yeah, I take it, and then sometimes I'll purposely not take it, so I have control.
You're taking it to help you with the real life thing, and some people use pot for the same exact reason, and they're doing it in a way that's responsible to them. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good point.
That's where you draw the line for yourself. But then again, it's like it goes the other way because you could say, Philip, I think I have a Benadryl problem, and I say, how much are you taking? And it's like 1.5. I'm not going to say, no, you don't. Right. I'm going to listen to you even in that situation. It works both ways. I'm not here to tell you have a problem with it. unless it like, dude, if it's like obvious and it's like,
Well,
I find like
let's be.
Benadryl bottles empty in your room, I might say, bro, like, what's going
Well,
on?
I'll tell you, like I've gone through a 365 bottle over a year. Like legitimately took them every night, and I found that. And get this, this is the interesting thing. I'm going to take you into this. This is during my 4 years of being clean from all substances, and I say that, and I specify. I took antibiotics. I've taken Benadryl. And I've never taken a narcotic during this time at all. But when I take it, it literally physically gives me a sense of relaxation, and it allows me to settle down so that I can sleep. It's a very, very calming medication that I use to go to bed. Now, I think about that, and I hear people who talk about how they'll smoke weed and it calms their nerves, or they're irritable, they're always feeling like they have anxiety and it calms them down. Well, for me, if I smoke, I feel anxiety. I don't know why, I get the reverse effect, but they get calm and it relaxes them. It used to work for me, and something happened over the years that reversed on me. But I say that to say, like, at what point do I mean abstinence? Because people start getting nitpicky about the drug, and they focus so much about why are you on kratom, why are you on Suboxone, why are you on methadone, instead of saying, well, guys, we know that these are just symptoms that we use. The real problem is inside of us. And I loved how he titled that show, that doctor, The Power of Addiction and Addiction to Power. That's powerful, bro. The title.
Yeah, I think that it's so funny because you look up the definition for sober and it only says something about alcohol and it says something about emotions. That's the only two things it talks about. So in other words, when you're in a rage or you're mad at somebody or you're just lit, you're not in a sober state of mind. That's what they call it. Sobering up is when you start calming down and becoming more like calm, forgiving, loving. And I think that says a lot. You can look it up. Anybody can look it up right now. This definition of sober only talks about alcohol. Now, when I say sober on my channel, I'm all inclusive. I'm saying everything because that's how people identify the word, but we're using the terminology wrong. So what is sober? Sober is not just abstaining from alcohol, but it's also a state of mind. It's being in a sober state of mind. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People throw the word around like you're not sober. Then we go into clean because that in, AA, they say sober. NA, they say clean. The reason they say clean is they know the word sober only pertains to alcohol. But when I hear the word clean, it's like, what's a clean way of living? Well, for everybody, it's going to look a little different. Now, granted, if I have a friend who's like doing crack or meth, that's like a different. We're not going to that. That's where I don't grade the lines. If I have a friend blacking out on alcohol and I find tons of vodka bottles, I'm going to say something with love and concern. But what I'm talking about is people that are prescribed medication, taper medication, Suboxone, stuff like that, or whether it's anxiety medication, or it's people that
your video keeps bouncing like this.
Yeah, if we don't differentiate crack from weed and we don't differentiate destructive behavior versus productive, the drug community looks at us like, or people in addiction look at us and think, do I really want what they're doing? Because it just seems very hypocritical, and they start to separate themselves. It's just not.
Your video's moving. Are you moving your hand?
Yeah.
You're doing like this.
I shake my leg. I do that.
You were like this the whole time, dude. The whole time, like for like at least a minute. But nah, you're good, man. We know you're coming from a place where a lot of people don't come to recovery. You did a recent interview that I loved, hands down, man. I was in there chatting in the chat room, and you were saying some stuff that like it comes borderline too far for like hardcore 12-steppers. And I loved it because you said, nah, you know what? I talk about the problem. I talk about the drug. I talk about how much. I talk about, and it's like, ooh. And the reason I found that so fascinating is the last thing when I was in active addiction, wanted to hear was the light. The light was the other side that says, and I emphasize, they repeat, let's get rid of that drug. You gotta get off that drug. Let's stop the drug. And if you talk the drug, they might connect. And then it's like, hold on, like, you did what? I know that. Like, when I was on my couch on day 5 and I was sitting there talking about Openness and I was expressing, and then it's the same shit. And everybody loves my day 5 and 7 video better than any video I can ever put out ever again. Because Derek was talking the talk, that language that everybody in active addiction can relate to. And they watched my journey. So there's that, like, attraction to this recovery stuff rather than promoting it. And like my brother, I have to catch myself. I want to save him, but it's like I'd rather just hear that he's okay. He doesn't even contact me. I'd rather just hear him say, "Hey, bro, I'm alive, man. I'm out here in Raleigh." I'd rather that. Instead, my brother feels like I want to try and save him, and in that way, it makes him feel like I'm trying to take away the drug. You don't want him to think you're trying to take away the drug, because the bottom line is the drug is not the real problem. You got to separate people from it if they're really going to try and like get. In my experience is at least separating them from it, because if you leave it to their own devices, most of the time they're going to just self-destruct. But they need to be able to like get help. And I've
learn how
noticed,
to love them.
yeah, how can you do that when you're still shooting up? That's kind of where I'm going. It's like it's hard, and I didn't want to quit.
The line is not about spraying out the line. It's about we need to love ourselves enough and be confident enough in our approach to abstinence that we're okay with somebody saying that they're on medication, Suboxone or weed.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to grab lines here. You know what I'm saying? If your drug of choice is shooting meth and you keep shooting meth and say you're sober, I mean, I don't need to be that voice that says you're not clean at any point. It's not going to be that. Like when you're clean, it's obvious. Like my sponsors, they had like some kind of light in them. That's why I chose them. And none of them had longer clean time than me. One of them was prescribed Adderall, and one of my drugs of choice is Adderall. That wasn't important to me. What was important is the way they spoke, and they spoke as a person with confident in their approach to their own recovery and with love. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think you've hit so many things in that video that you just did pertaining to this subject. Everybody needs to go check that out. But I heard it said there's a girl in recovery that talked to me, and she's like, "Derek, I don't judge what their status is. They know whether they're using it as a tool to really better their lives or if they're really using something to abuse." Like, I'm gonna be interviewing a doctor here soon, and this doctor, I'm gonna ask some pertinent questions about like Suboxone, for example. Like they're giving them 16 milligrams a day. I know a ton of people who are prescribed it, and they flip their Suboxone strips to get high. So they're not coming from that like.
Some people are even IVing Suboxone. I read that in the comments.
Yeah.
They know, but he knew. He said, "I know. I don't need somebody to tell me. I know I'm not sober. It's a problem." And I just, for me, it's like just let them tell me unless it's explicitly obvious they have a problem, and then show love and concern, because it works the other way around. I knew someone that was sober for like 20 years. She accidentally took a sip of champagne or something, and she spit it out instantly. And she reestablished saying she wasn't clean anymore. And in my mind, I could have went there and said, that wasn't a relapse. Like, you didn't even swallow the drink. But I understand that she could say what she wants, and I can follow her, nod my head, and say, I'm here for you. Like, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
I think both ways.
I was going to say, we beat ourselves up too much over stuff like that. Like,
if I'm concerned and she's stressing out, but she wasn't. She was pretty chill. But if she was stressing out, just crying, upset, I might have said, look, I'm concerned, and do you want to talk about this? Like, I don't know if I really think of this as a relapse, rather than coming at her like, that's not a relapse. Like, you know what I mean? And walking away. I always ask myself, how can I be of service to this person? How can I be a good symbol of recovery to this person? How can I be a symbol of compassion, respect, integrity? How can I do that? And it's almost never closed-minded approach. It's usually open-minded, and it's not trying to be their father or their preacher or their minister or any of these things. It's trying to be their friend, and you go into the drugs. Yeah, talking drugs I think is super important, and the recovery community I think as a whole looks at my channel like, what are you doing? And I would send somebody early in sobriety to my videos. I understand to an extent, but it's like it goes over their head. Like, they don't get what I'm doing. But why I'm doing it, I'm attracting them to what they're already attracted to. They're attracted to drugs. And then if they want to hear a message of recovery, I tell it to them at the end, a message of hope once they relate. Mm-hmm. And I think talking drugs, I sit with active addicts, and I don't talk too much recovery because it's a language they don't understand, and you can't really reach them. And I see people talking to these addicts, and it's like, just recovery. You're powerless. Your life's unmanageable. this is what I did. And they'll do little disclaimers here and there, like, I can only say what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they so heavily imply what works for them, and they don't bring up any other options or any other ways, that it's almost like that's all you're talking about, bro, is what works for you. And addicts don't get that, and they don't really care. They want to know what worked for you in addiction before they want to know what worked for you in recovery. What drugs worked for you?
Yeah, good point.
Thing addiction worked for you, and then they listen to your message. That's why I think it's important to cover, because the drugs don't matter. Like, we get in recovery, we know that. We're like, oh, it doesn't matter if you're on meth, alcohol, whatever. In a way, we all fill that void of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But the addict or the mom who finds the drugs in the son's room, or just the general public, the drug is important. And that's before they come into recovery and learn more about themselves. So who am I to, like, I feel like I'm jumping them way too far ahead. I'm not treatment. I'm not here to teach people how to be sober. I'm literally just an intermediary, a middleman between the addict and treatment or programs or whatever works for them. And I'm as the middleman, I have to understand my role, which is not to convince them to be sober, not teach them how to be sober. It's merely to give them hope that it's possible,
right?
Enough for them to reach out. And the way I'm going to reach them is through talking drugs. It's not going to be, preaching recovery over and over again.
Right. And I know my channel does do a lot of preaching of recovery, but I feel that
you evolve, bro.
Yeah.
You evolve. I said in my video, I was like, the stuff I'm saying today, I had to delete videos.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying I won't delete videos at some point, but
I have to say you evolve, and I think it's important that those videos are up because they show how we change in our views and we mature. And we become, because we're in recovery, and as a recovering person, I'm constantly looking for ways to love and show more compassion. And it's a slow process, bro. It took me a long time to get to a place where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't judge other people who say they're clean that use pot.
Right.
But I like that I've grown, and I look back at some content. Some of it I'm like, let me leave it up for the sake of science for people to see how my views change. And some of it I was like, that's some closed-minded stuff. I said, I think I need to delete.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I came through a 12-step way, and I do know that it works, and it works for me, and it works for many others, but it may not work for everybody, and that needs to be admitted. I do, on my channel, I do say, hey, look, this is what works for me. I say that not because I'm trying to say you need to do it. I say it because I also know that it's not the only thing that works. I got a phone call right before we did this video, and I spoke for like 25, 30 minutes, and it was a girl who was talking to me, and she was expressing how she's been struggling with painkillers, doing these 30 milligram Roxys, and she just can't stop, and she thinks some of them are stamped with fentanyl and stuff. And I'm like, you never know what you're getting out there, honestly. Like, you got to know what you're looking at to really know. She doesn't know. She just knows that she, like, woke up like an OD style status. And I was like, wow. And she's like, well, I'm thinking about doing kratom. What do you suggest? And I'm like, I don't want to make suggestions about what you should take, honestly, because I don't know if that's going to work for you. I don't know what will work for you.
Yeah, I never do that. And SAMHSA, like, they have recovery coaches, and their principles are really, like, pretty clear. And they say in the position we're in, we shouldn't really even be giving advice. We should only share from our experience as a friend. It's kind of something that came to me naturally. I'm very glad it did. But when I was reading the principles of SAMHSA, I was like, damn, that's me. But they're like, some of them like, I need to get sober, any advice? And I just say, like, I don't really give advice. That's just not my forte, but I can tell you what worked for me. And what worked for me was super cliche. I mean, 12 steps worked for me. Sober living, rehab, everything that you would naturally think of. So I can answer questions about my experiences at rehab or with the 12 steps or my views, but I can't really go there to say you should do the 12 steps. You know what I mean? Because if it doesn't work for them, then they feel like it's not possible for them. If CG Kid came down from his almighty... I'm making a joke here. CG Kid came down from his almighty YouTube throne to talk to me, and he gave me advice, and I did it, and it didn't work. Because people think way too highly of me. I'm just as messed up. I'm a rooster trying to pretend to be a human.
Oh.
And CG Kid comes down and from his throne, that I put him on his pedestal. Because he has like a big following and stuff. He gives me advice, and what doesn't work, what's going to work? I don't know what to do next. And I don't want to, I'd say, like, what worked for me might not genuinely not work for you. And I know people that they don't do meetings or anything. They haven't even gone to rehab. They just made a decision and stopped. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you go, well, you weren't an addict, or there's always something being said about that. I like recovery is just honestly making progress in your life. It's not even so much about what the drug substance is, even though that drug may be what harms us at the moment. There's deeper stuff going on, and that guy, he hit the nail on the head. I wrote down a few things, and he was talking about how the drugs give us a sense of peace and control. And I remember I lost control of a situation while in recovery back in January. I lost my mind. I was going through the hardest situation I've ever dealt with in my life. And other than when I was coming off heroin. And it was so traumatic I couldn't eat for 5 days. And when I went to counseling, the medical professional lady was telling me, after I explained how I felt, she wanted to hear my feelings. This is what I loved about it. It was like, there's no science behind this. Like, here's a pamphlet. I always talk about this. I was in their detox center reading this pamphlet. Have you stolen from your mother? Yeah. Have you stolen from your family members? Yeah. Have you lied? Yeah. Have you robbed a bank? Or no. All those are subjective, like, society questions. And then at the end, it's like, if you've answered more than 50%, you are a drug addict. What do you mean? You have the disease of addiction. What do you mean? That seems a little bit subjective, but based off of these things, that's how they were answering what you were. And this guy's talking about control. I lost control. And this counselor lady turns to me and she's like, your problem is, Derek, is you have no control over the situation. I was addicted to power. See, and the guy talks about the power of addiction and the addiction to power. When I did not have power, I lost a sense of who I was. You know, I'm that guy.
It's absolutely right. You're 100% right. And I like what one guy, he's in my comments. I'm probably going to butcher how he wrote it, but I'll paraphrase what I think he was trying to say is that when your addiction is to abstaining from drugs, in other words, that power of I'm sober no matter what, like you don't take your anxiety meds, because let's not get it twisted. Anxiety disorder is real. ADD is real. Mm-hmm. Mental illness causes drug addiction. I mean, and people that have anxiety disorder, it's debilitating. It's a horrible thing to go through. But the people that are addicted to that power, and, you know, people that are going, I'm sorry I'm jumping around, but people that are going through anxiety disorder, they're going to relapse. Usually your mental health goes along with your sobriety. If your mental health is declining, you're more likely to relapse. Not saying you will. If your mental health is good, you're less likely to relapse. These guys taking medication, I think it makes them less likely to relapse.
Yeah.
But these guys who are really into this abstinence and this addiction to power, and it's like, I haven't put any chemicals in my body, I'm clean, you know? I think almost like they're still in chains. They're just switching iron ones for gold ones, but they're still in chains. You get what I'm trying to say? Like, this guy said it. I was like, that was deep, bro. He said it was Alan Watts said that.
That's Alan Watts is a deep philosophical teacher. If you haven't studied some of his stuff, check him out.
Like, if your addiction is to abstaining from drugs, you're switching iron chains for gold chains. You know what I mean? More luxurious chains, but you're still chained.
Well, let's touch on something that guy that we were talking about. What's his name again? The doctor?
Gaber Mate.
Okay, Gaber Mate. I keep forgetting his name. Mate. Mate. I'm going to have that in the description so you guys check it out. He was talking about with the addiction to power. Remember when... Okay, so do you think that there's somewhat of a sense of control we all want? And somehow...
Yes, and authority.
Okay, so somehow all of us want that power. And that this... He mentions Buddha and he mentions Jesus in a very interesting way. And he says both of them are tempted by the evil one. All right, whoever that evil one is in that teaching, one is the devil, and the other one, for whatever Buddha is, tempted with power. And, you know, I will give you, the story in the Gospels go, I will give you all the kingdoms. I will give you all this power. And Jesus is like, man shall not live by bread alone. Man shall live by every word that proceedeth from the mouth of God. You know, like he took a very humble, I don't want the power. He took a humble road. And by him denying the power, the outward power of the world, he retained the true power, which is in every single one of us. And that was what blew me away when this guy mentioned that, because I told this story on my channel a long time ago about God and Satan. And God's going to make man. And Satan overhears God's plans about man and sees that man's going to be an ambitious, intelligent creature. And so he thinks, how can I hide God from man? Oh, I'll hide him under the earth beneath the rocks. He'll never find God. And then he thinks hard about it and he realizes man's ambitious. He's intelligent. He'll find a way to remove the rock, unearth, and find God. I can't hide him there. So then he decides, I'll hide him underneath the sands of the sea beneath the ocean. Man will find an apparatus that'll allow him to go beneath the water, sweep away the sand, and he'll find God. So he thinks long and hard about this plan and realizes, I got it. Light bulb goes off. I will hide God inside of every man or every person. And they'll always be looking outward to try and be satisfied, to find him, to find it, to find her. And never look inside and realize that it was there the whole time. You see what I'm saying? And that's the whole powerful, story, in my opinion.
I think another thing he says, which is more easily adopted by agnostic and atheists, is that human nature is actually good. Human nature is not selfish. We hear that all the time. Human nature is selfish. Human nature is very... Yeah, we have a selfish nature to us that's always there. I believe that. But for the most part, our nature is actually pretty good. You really think about your interactions with people. How often is it that they're outwardly selfish towards you? It happens, and when it happens, it's really bad, but it's not really that frequent. I think that humans have a value within them that's heavily obstructed, but it's always there. And I think that's what he was talking about, that the value of being of service, the value of being patient, kind, loving. I think addicts, even in active addiction, that value is there. It's just heavily obstructed by this self-hatred. You get what I'm saying?
No, I get it.
There's like this guy I talked to. There's a guy I talked to, and he's very wise, and I really like the way he thinks. I'm probably going to butcher his story, but he said, two students show up to class on time, basically. The teacher asked both students why you're late. The first student, she asked, the kid gives an excuse. He said, this, that, and the other, But the student in the back of the classroom, the teacher asked him, and he said, I was on time. You just didn't see me. I was in the back. And I think this plays into addiction, because when addicts enter recovery, it's like we're teaching them, you don't know how to live, you're selfish, you're self-seeking, but we're forgetting that there's this value of good within them that is heavily obstructed. That student that said, I was never late, you just didn't see me, he uprooted the validity of the question. And I think when we're talking to addicts and the way that they're teaching addicts, it shouldn't be so much like, this is what your behavior is now, this is what's bad, this is how you're bad, how you're an addict. It's more of like, what are the values within you that are already there? Like, you were never late here. You were here all along. A part of you was always here in this room with us. A part of you always had these values. Now let's dig deep and find what they are. And that's like what they, I don't know if I could give too much, but that's what they call the discovery model. And some guy out in California is working on it. I'm very excited to see what he comes up with. But it's just, that's kind of how they do things at this facility I heard of, and they have like a really high success rate as a result, is really identifying the values and identifying the motives of addiction, Yeah,
no, I love that. And I just, want the audience to know I'm not a religious man, and you can define what this being is or this non-being is, because with that story I was saying, just relating back, I almost thought I was speaking to myself in a higher, like a place within myself that I never really paid attention to. It was my own consciousness, so to speak. So whether this is something beyond me or within me, it was just something I tapped into that I knew I needed help. And so
I was always there. And I think that, I say with the atheists, I think human nature is genuinely good because we're social creatures and we have to fit within a social circle to survive. And we know that being good is the way. So in a way, it could be coming from something that's selfish. I don't really know the answer there.
Yeah, I don't.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't really have the answers, but I just know that there's something like within us that we could tap into, and that's what my experience was in recovery. That it was always there. It's just heavily obstructed. This want to do good and do the next right thing. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
We don't want to steal. Like, even in addiction, I would feel kind of bad about stealing to an extent at times. You know what I'm saying? I didn't feel good about it. I was proud of. is going down the street and saying, I stole from my mom. But if I did something good for my mom, I did feel proud of it. So
That's true.
the values were there. What was right and what was wrong, I didn't need to be taught what was right and wrong. I always knew. And I think teaching somebody what's right and wrong for them could kind of get them to close themselves off rather than asking them what is truly right for you. And I think when, not to get too far in the 12 steps, but when they do that second step, a lot of people have people write down the values of their higher power, if it existed, if it was real. And I think that's when they're basically opening up the discovery process. But does the word, does religion need to tie into it at all? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And I think most people have good answers. It's very rare in my experience to find someone do their second step and it's like they're saying, what are values of power greater than yourself? And they say, oh, he would be really horrible, mean to people. That's not a common experience. Usually it's like he'll be merciful, he'll be compassionate. And I think what it is that there's infinite capacity for good and infinite capacity for evil. I think these are eternal concepts. I think you take the most evil person in the world that's ever existed, he could have been more evil. There's always a one-up on evil, and the same with good. You take the best saint that ever existed, and there's always somebody better. I think these are infinite principles. And I've talked to, people that don't believe, but they have these values, and that's what they connect with, is these principles that are written on man's heart, almost, it seems. It's like we naturally have this human nature within us to do something good. And they connect with that instead of connecting with the substances.
Yeah, and both the natural explanation and the supernatural or the spiritual side both have their own reasons for believing in those things. One says socially we evolved with these type of principles and recognized that killing off one another and doing these things to each other didn't work, and these moral principles have been instilled throughout who knows how long, that have caused us to shape the way we feel and in our experience subconsciously and consciously into our next generation and the next generation, which has made it what it is. Or the spiritual side says there's a universal moral lawgiver, and that moral lawgiver is a universal principle called God, whether you say it's a being or it's a principle or it's an essence or whatever, and it instills this in all of us. Regardless of your position, both of them make sense, and the goal is, are we bettering our life?
Yeah.
That's it. Are you...
The one advice I would give somebody, if they, I said I didn't give advice before, but what I'm coming to terms with is my advice is be honest, be open-minded, be willing, and understand you're trying to learn how to love yourself for the first time. You know what I mean? That's my advice, regardless of the path you go. It's not, you have to go here, you have to go there, you have to go to 12 steps. It's like, see if the 12 steps helps you love yourself. See if counseling helps you love yourself.
Let me ask you this, because...
It's that guy, you told me that one time you were sharing about something deep to you, and the guy turned to you and said something along the lines of, keep it simple, stupid. Or so, you get that sometimes.
Yeah.
That's like, I don't usually agree with like closed-minded statements, but I think that sometimes they have a point, like keep it simple. And simply put, going way back to when we were talking about abstinence and stuff, simply put, I just asked myself how I could be loving, and not be mean or hurtful for no reason other than to put someone else down, Yeah, addicts struggling, they don't really understand too much of what we're talking about, but to keep it simple, I feel like, and understand that they need to learn to love themselves without the substances, because these substances crank up serotonin, epinephrine, dopamine. It's easy to love yourself with the brain full of serotonin. I was on ecstasy and I was in love with a Pepsi bottle. I fell in love with one. I knew a guy that fell in love with a toaster. But it goes to show you that these chemicals make us able to love ourselves. And that's like a huge thing that humans need, because when we love ourselves, that is the power that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And if we love ourselves and we have that power, we don't feel the need to put other people down to be in power. You go back to that analogy that Gaber Mate said with the Buddha and Jesus. That's what I feel like he's coming at, that they didn't need to get love from the outside world. They loved themselves. They were tempted. You know what I'm saying? And the drugs are almost like, in that Bible analogy, they're almost like the Satan on your back that's like, do this and you will feel love. Connect with this and you will feel loved. And you say in recovery, you're like, I don't need that to love myself. And that's where it goes away. And when it goes away and you live a sober life and you love yourself without substances, it's so much more real, deep. And I think that's why in those analogies, the Buddha picked that side and stuff like that, because they know it's more real. And
You
you know what
know,
I'm talking about. It's like, it's
yes.
not like that you sense of well-being that you get. Euphoria is defined as a sense of well-being. Recovery is actual state of well-being. You know what I mean? It's something you could share with other people. I felt like I was in a really, it's weird because drugs feel healthy, man. That's what's weird about the addiction to them. They almost feel good for you. Like when I took ecstasy, part of how I got really into it, or meth or things like that, is they felt like they're therapeutic. They felt good for me.
Hmm.
But I couldn't really share like that with the outside world, you know? And now it's like, if I feel good about something, I can share it with my mom. You know, if I go up to somebody and I say, I feel really good, and they're like, why? I'm like, because I smoke meth. You know what I mean? I can't really share that with them.
Yeah.
But if I go up to somebody and I say, I feel really good, and they're like, why? And I said, it's because I eat healthy. Oh, what do you eat? And then he opens up the discussion. And how do you feel? And now you're
Hmm.
starting to share that with somebody else. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they start feeling happy for you. Whereas if I say I'm meth, yeah, I'm happy, but are they happy for me? No.
Right. No, they're
Why
usually
would they be happy
not.
for me? They're actually worried, and they rightfully so. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well,
So
if I,
I say to the addict struggling, there's such a, like, we're not. That's like, I bought into it because I kept hearing people say that. They say recovery's so great, recovery's so awesome. I was like, these guys are so full of crap. Like, there's no way that they feel that good. And I decided to just give it an honest try. It's like, why deny it before you try it? When I got sober, I wasn't quitting drugs forever. I was taking a break.
mm,
And to see what my relationship with drugs were. I figured I'd been using almost daily for 7 years. I owed myself a year break just to see what I'm like without it. If I don't like what I'm like without it, the drugs ain't going anywhere. This is how I bought into it. You know, this is not promotion. This is just me sharing like what worked and why I bought it. Nobody
yeah.
sold it to me. And I said to myself, why don't I give it a year and see what this thing really is? You know, and to be honest, like, I just turned my will over to the counselors and turned it over to I did go to the 12 steps, got a sponsor, did everything he said. I did go to sober living, did everything the counselor, social worker said, because I tried everything else and I was honest with myself. And I said, every time I tried to do it, I failed. Why is that? Because the only thing I think of is the counselors would give me advice and I would take some of it, but not all of it. And I decided this time I'm taking all of it. But that's my path to recovery because I'm that type of addict. You know, every addict is unique and every path to recovery is different. Someone could not take all their advice from the counselor and they can manage to still stay clean. I'm not that type of person. I had to take all of their advice and just do it.
Well,
You know what I'm
see how
saying?
you just said that to me? That the way you just said that to me is exactly, I relate to that because that's what I try to say with my message. It's like, if you see yourself in what I'm doing, what if you really can like kind of diagnose yourself by looking at me and say, damn, that is me. I see no harm in trying that. I also always mention go to see a doctor because I don't recommend anyone sit at home and try and detox on a couch. Period. Period. Today they have stamped fentanyl pills that have Xanax in them. And if you've been taking that for 30 days straight and think you're just coming off opioids, come to find out you're coming off benzos and you die because you're not aware of what you've been on. I had a person call me about that, bro. They literally told me when they went to go take the urinalysis at the detox center, or no, it was a Suboxone clinic. They found out that they had benzos in them on top of opioids and some other chemical. They didn't even know. It wasn't just here's fentanyl and a little bit of opioids. No, they had benzos in these fentanyl pills. So there's, you never know. I
Very
just,
well, when we live in the world we are in the war on drug addicts, and that's going to create all kinds of analogs. We're not in the war on drugs because you can't.
no.
It's Mate. He puts it straight up in one of his interviews. He says you can't have war with an inanimate object. You
Yeah.
can't have war on a table. You can't have war with like this empty bottle of water.
Mm-hmm.
We're in the war on drug addicts, and that is like going to create these analogs because we're essentially like China is poisoning us. Mexico's poisoning us. People on the news, they talk about overdose from fentanyl. The real truth is it's not fentanyl. It's analogs of fentanyl. There's carfentanil. There's methylfentanyl. There's over 300 analogs of fentanyl, maybe even 1,000. It's like K2. They banned K2. You know what I mean? Because they always come up with a new synthetic cannabis. There's hundreds of thousands of them now. And I say this. The reason I say this is we're in a really dark time. And the pain and the consequences could be irreversible. I have people reach out to me because they got laced or they got a fake pill. They either are dead or they have permanent mental trauma. And you know, the depths and darkness of addiction is so dark. You know, the more I learn about it, the less answers I have. And I know there's people watching like, who are you? Like, you don't understand me. And I might not understand you in a quantifiable way, but qualitatively I can somewhat understand, or at least try to. And hopefully you find love through that. You see that you can be loved. But I've met addicts that have gone so far down. It's like I got so up and almighty, like, you know, everybody has hope, everybody has hope. But then you sit across from an addict that's shooting up in front of you and saying that he's been to rehab 25 times, he's been to prison for years. He has the choice table of going to rehab or going to prison for 20 years, and they choose prison for 20 years over rehab. And they tell me they aren't choosing it. They said they are in the passenger seat, and nothing has worked for this guy. And you see how hopeless his situation is, and it breaks my heart, because anybody can overdose from these analogs. Anybody can reach that point where it's like of just dire hopelessness, of underlying PTSD, all these issues. And it breaks my heart because I see the good person underneath, and I actually relate to them. And that's what breaks my heart the most. I see a good person that's obstructed. In society, it's like we're pumping, you know, oil into the water. We're destroying the earth. Gabriel Monte talks about that. Like, we're building all these buildings, and we're literally destroying the earth because of our own addiction as a society, like fossil fuels, this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
You know, our revolution, but we don't want to at the addict maybe just as bad as we want to put the addict as like alienated because they're destroying their body, but we're destroying the earth as a society. We're a very divided country, and addiction is going to be a consequence of having a country and a world that's extremely divided, and where people are always trying to one up each other, always trying to make more money, think that's going to solve all their happiness. We're an addicted society. Drug addicts are a consequence of that, and we need to learn how to love them. I mean, I think the war on drug addicts is so stupid. I think that these people are sick and they need help. But in the meantime, it's like meeting them with love and compassion is the way to go, you know, and that's what I try to do. And trying to strip someone of their clean date, to me, is just, it's not a loving thing to do. But granted, if they're like using meth every day and doing heroin and they're going on a podium and preaching about sobriety, I might stop them and say, bro, like, why? Like, why are you doing that? You know what I mean? But I'm not going to judge somebody for smoking a little pot in recovery or drinking a couple beers here and there. It's just not my place, you know?
I honestly am trying to learn not to judge at all with that. Like, there are some really good friends of mine, bro.
I'll judge a little bit. You know, I just think, I think that people today, we need to have a line where we draw the line, what clean is and what isn't, to stop somebody from IVing meth and going up and saying they're sober, like in front of everybody, and doing meth in front of them. But that's like an extreme. You know, people are it's very fear-based, and they're very focused on extremes. I can tell you what we're doing right now is not working. You know what I mean? The success rate, and Gabriel Monte talks about this, and other psychiatrists, and I don't say this to take anyone's hope away, but they say it's 5%. That's doing good. That's success. That's extremely good. He said that's prodigy status of addiction rehabilitation is 5%. And he said there's a lot of things that go into that. He said mainly the war on drug addicts, and also just, I think it's also has to do with the way recovery is. Recovery, I've been asked, like, do you think you could have received more support when you entered recovery? And I said, I think I could have received better support when I was active in addiction. I believe somebody could have told me the message in a way I would have resonated with. I think someone could have talked drugs to me and related to me and been a friend that I could call. It's really in recovery advocacy. I asked one girl, and I asked everybody I talked to this, and I think it's super important. I asked them, is there anything anybody could have said to you that would stop you? I'm immediately hit with a no. They even tell me how they build their social circle so nobody would say anything to them. But this one girl I talked to, she stopped, and she actually really thought about it for a while. She said, you know what, Philip? Generally, no. But there was these moments where I was laying in the bathtub, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And at that point, somebody could have said something that would have got through to me, but nobody knew when that time was, and I had nobody to reach out to.
Wow.
And that's the problem I feel like we as YouTubers and content creators on this platform should try to address. We should try to be that person that they can reach out to. You know what I mean? Because we never know. They could be that when I get a text and they're like, I need help, it could have been the first time they ever asked for help, and it could have been those 5 minutes where somebody can make an impact, but nobody knows. But they're reaching out. You know what I'm saying? And we need to have that available to them. It's incredibly important. Open-mindedness and being on YouTube and understanding that if you reach out to me, and when you do, you are met with open-mindedness. You know, I will never say, you say, look, man, I'm on medication. I'll never say stop taking your meds. I'll never say if they're thinking about kratom or Suboxone. I'll never say don't do that. Say do what you do, anything. The key to recovery, and recovery starts with harm reduction. When do you enter recovery? Well, I say if you go from 1 bag of heroin a day to 2 bags, if you go from 2 bags of heroin a day to 1 bag of heroin a day, you're officially in recovery, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
it's
harm.
you're trying. Yeah. Go ahead.
You're just trying to get better. Yeah, as simply as that. You're trying to get better. That's recovery to me.
And relapse is, in my opinion, relapse isn't, oh, I made a goof up. I mean, let's be honest, even those who are in recovery, who are strict about that, they recognize, like, if someone has to have a surgery and they end up putting the meds in them, they don't call that a relapse when they have to be prescribed the meds. Why? It's not the drug. It's this. It's your behaviors. You see what I'm saying? It's about the behavior of the person. And to me, addiction recovery and addiction relapse is really about behaviors. That's what it really boils down to, in my opinion. It's not about the drug itself. It's like, hold on, you just got on Suboxone. You're not clean. Well, actually, sir, I just got a job at a beautiful place. I wake up from the time I need to go to work. I take my kids to school. My relationship at home is working. I have my life back. Yeah, I'm not maybe completely without mind-altering substances, but that what is, like, where, at what point is it that we want to control people and tell them what they should be on and shouldn't be on? Is that what it is? Is it power that we want to be like, it's this way because I did it this way? Is it jealousy that they get to, or they're on something and you're not? Is it I'm better than you? Or can we finally stop that and say, you know what? You're a human who's suffering, and if I was where you were, I get it. Like, I say this all the time, bro. And I just recently talked about how I took half of a Suboxone strip when I was at her house trying to feel better. I was so desperate that I'm lucky and blessed that things worked out the way that they did for me. Because I took a half a Suboxone, it put me in a precipitated withdrawal, and I was already through so much pain that I just was like, I'm going to go without anything at this point. I've already experienced so much. I'm just going to go with the flow. And I was already hurting. So I was like, I'm done. I'm not getting on nothing. And I didn't want to have to later down the road worry about it. But if I went back in active addiction, I was going to be honest with myself right now. I can't promise you that I wouldn't have tried kratom or Suboxone or methadone to get off. I did. My brother-in-law that I've interviewed on my channel, he was prescribed methadone. And he asked him for a front. I tried this months before I quit, to give me 2 days worth of methadone so that I could actually come off. And I tried to quit heroin doing it, and I found myself those 2 days with the methadone, then taking painkillers from my wife, transitioning, and never was able to get off. Like, I just tried, but I couldn't.
Yeah, and honestly, like, when people ask me, are you in a state of relapse or are you in a state of recovery? I say to them, it really depends on when you ask me. Like, this past year, how have I been in a state of relapse? I quit nicotine. That was hard. I went cold turkey withdrawal. Then I tapered down for about 3 months, and I managed to get off it for about a week. I bought a pack of cigarettes while I was in Chicago. I went back out on nicotine. I know it's bad for me. I want to stop, but I can't. Is that sober? Like, I am saying, this is destructive. This is causing me to not love myself as much. The juice gets in my mouth. I feel gross. I feel dependent. When I can't find my e-cig, I get, like, lit. Like, I get mad. And I'm, like, really upset that I finally quit this thing, and then I go back a week later. Literally a week. What is that? And then the other ways I've emotionally relapsed, I was being interviewed on a channel about influencer depression. And my emotional relapse really tied into work because, my YouTube channel, when it took off, I didn't know how to handle it, and I didn't really have anybody I could talk to for support in that way. And my head and ego sometimes got to me, or sometimes I was obsessed about it. Like, and I realize now that when I was obsessing about what videos next, what are people going to think about me, I was at a point in my recovery where I didn't love myself, and I was obsessing so I wouldn't have to face that truth and sit there and be okay with myself. I was addicted to the power of having a platform. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I think that's okay. That's what recovery is. It's okay to take a step backwards so we can take 2 steps forward. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And it's okay to talk about these things. And if somebody came at me like, you're using nicotine, you already committed to quit, you're not sober, walks away, you shouldn't even say you're sober. You shouldn't even love yourself for that. or you shouldn't say you're in recovery. I ain't going to open up to them. I'll open up to people like you. I know you're open-minded.
Yeah.
If somebody sees my relationship with YouTube's healthy and they're like, you're just doing this for attention, you're addicted, you need to get off of it. That's not what most people respond to. But if someone shows loving concern and they're like, hey, man, if you ever want to talk, hit me up. I'll reach out to them when it gets bad. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what's important.
And
we need more friends. Be connected. We don't need any divisions. We don't need to build walls between each other. And anytime someone comes at me, they're building a wall. They're throwing it up.
And you said something in your video that was important about that. You said you actually are asking people to be concerned about them, because at that point you recognize they're sick. Because you have to say, is it addiction to power at this point that's causing them to want to control how you should be in their eyes? And therefore, where's the serenity in that? There's some things that are out of your control. Why are you trying to have power over them? That was my biggest issue. When I had to go to that counselor, man, I'm talking, I have never had a more, in recovery, in this whole thing, I saw things and she was like, you lost all power. You lost all that power and you feel like the world is ending. And there was so much more that was said in private confidentiality with me that made me really know what it feels like to lose power. And I know that I've gained some power back unknowingly. I guarantee you I've gotten back into that. So it's like, am I completely powerless at this point? I'm really not. That's why daily, if you go to a recovery meeting, they want you to say the serenity prayer, because it's not spiritual perfection, but it's like we're trying to just kind of live a life of trying to reduce power of the outer world and just control ourselves. Once we control who we are, then I think we'll be the best tool this world has to offer to help others. Because if you can't even control your own power and your own self, it's best that you stay away. But that's the sad part. That's part of their own addiction. They don't know how to not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What is power? Power is my capacity for love, honesty, open-mindedness, willingness. So me being honest with you and open-minded, saying, you know what? I was an emotional relapse with YouTube. You know what? I am powerless over nicotine. I don't need anybody to tell me that, because I find strength in my honesty with myself to say I am a nicotine addict who's active, and I use it to escape. I use work to escape. I've used sex to escape. I've used all these things. Right now I'm already thinking about what time it is, because I got to get to the vape shop. That's just to show you. Date 19. I got another 40. Well, I'm not saying we're going for 40 minutes, but I'm already itching. Yeah, I got school in the morning, so I can't go to the vape shop. They ain't going to be open at 7 a.m., so I got to get there. And there's nothing that can stop me. Nothing you're going to say that's going to stop me. Nothing I could believe, and I don't love myself. It's obstruction from my core values of taking care of my body. There's power in being honest. There's power in being open-minded, and there's power in love. And to me, closing off, it's hiding insecurity. So these people that preach and try to appeal their clean day, I don't think they should be met with hostility. I think they should be met with compassion and love, just as much so as the active addict who's using, or the person who's newly in sobriety. They need to be they come up to you, say, you're not clean, get out of here. Yeah. You say, if you ever want to talk, I'm here. Show concern, because there might be an insecurity that they don't feel like they're clean, or they feel like, they're struggling with an obsession. Let them know they could talk to you.
I love you, brother. I appreciate that, man. And thanks for coming on here for sure. I mean, I'm not going to keep you all night. I know you got to get your vapes, so.
Yeah, but yeah.
What do you want? You ended on this, man. You end your note on this, because I've said plenty on this channel. And what would you say to my audience that's on my channel?
Oh man, if I were to say anything, reach out and don't be ashamed. Don't hate yourself. There's no point in beating yourself up. And you have to jump to extremes. You can reach out, and it doesn't mean you have to commit. But I think just the act of reaching out, I think actions speak louder than words, not just to other people, but to ourselves as well. So when you text Derek, or when you go to a meeting, and it might just be an hour meeting, you never go again. You might text Derek, you might never text him again. You don't have to overcommit. But I think just reaching out and the act of doing something speaks volumes to ourselves. So if you feel like drugs are causing you to hate yourself, or not love yourself, or feel worthless, or hindering your life, holding back, don't be ashamed. If that's all I can say, like, just reach out, and if you want somebody to talk to, you can relate. My Instagram's out there. I try to answer as much as I can. I know Derek puts his information out there. We're not the type of people that you're going to come to us and be hit with closed-minded dogma. We're the type of people that will sit there with you and try to feel with you and try to share what worked for us.
I love that,
That's all
man.
I'd say.
That's a fact, and I love you, dude. Thanks, and that's true, guys. You guys feel free to reach out. You go down in the description, CG Kids channels there. Make sure you subscribe. You guys are actually seeing someone who's more progressive than what you would usually see from a recovery person. However, all of his stuff is focused on self-love, like learning how to love yourself, giving hope to the addict and the loved ones. Like, that's self-love. That's how I see what you're doing. You're on a mission, man, and I think you have big things in store for you ahead. And I'm blessed to be your friend, man, and I really am. And if you guys are out there suffering, you're struggling, you made it this far into this video, be sure to go down there and show some love. Hit me up on Instagram. Hit him up on Instagram, Facebook, you name it. All the platforms. I got a telephone number you guys can text. If you call and I don't pick up, leave a message or text me. That's pretty much it. CG Kid, I'm gonna let you go to your vape store, bro.
All right, much love.
All right, bro.
Love, fucker.